Hey everyone, you are watching CareMinds podcast episode. I'm your host, Daniel. Today I'm talking to Yuval Rubin from Ada Health. And in this episode, we're going to find out about Yuval's career path as a data analyst, transitioning into product management in healthcare, the usage of AI tools in product management, avoiding analysis paralysis, qualities of a product manager, and career challenges. Hope you enjoy the episode. Let's get started. Hi, Yuval. Thank you very much for joining. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Yuval has great data analyst experience, and which I think is her unfair advantage, and the thing that is valued at Ada Health, a company that we're going to touch base a little bit more in the podcast later. But I believe your data analyst experience, you've acquired this while serving in Israel military intelligence unit. I was very fascinated about it, and I think you're the right person to ask this question. What do you think? What factors do you attribute to such a developed startup-friendly ecosystem in Israel?
So for me, the military service was a great experience because I served in the intelligence force. So it's a unit called 8200. It's the largest unit in the military of Israel, and one of the things is that there's a lot of diversity in that unit, and this is attributed to the fact that first of all, men are more prone to go to combat. So you have a lot of females serving in that unit and learning a lot of coding skills and data analysis skills and so on. And also the fact that they need to take people from different socioeconomic levels. So it gives a kind of like a good starting to your career if you have first like a lot of a diverse background and a lot of skill that you acquire in a very early age before you need to decide what to study. So I think this is one of the things that really helps the ecosystem in Israel, because a lot of young people that are very hungry, let's call it, are learning a lot of skills in a very early age, and then they can develop and they get to know people from different backgrounds and so on.
Yeah, right. And the sheer amount of startups in Israel is just crazy. And, the amount of founders that successfully fundraised and pushing different industries is also quite remarkable. And I believe after that, you were working with Israel Ministry of Health, and healthcare in Israel goes without saying. It's one of the best, if not the best, healthcares in the world.
I was working in the Prime Minister Office of Israel, working with different ministries as part of it. So one of the ministry I worked most closely with is the health ministry, and working on projects such as how to anonymize a lot of patient data to provide value in a larger scale. And that was really interesting, and also was a very big stepping stone for the collaboration with Pfizer on the COVID vaccine later. We did not know that this is coming, but yeah.
Amazing. Good stuff. And so given that experience and given that exposure to the ability to transform healthcare for the end user, how would you compare these sectors of like a government sector versus like for-profit business, which offers more possibilities for a young professional to develop their skills early on?
So it really depends on your what do you go after in a way. So for me, the public sector was very interesting, and like if you're more after ideology or a certain values that you want to promote, the public sector is the way to go. I really believe that public sector is crucial in that, and that the change will come from within, even if you disagree with the politics. The private sector, I really like the high pace. So for me, like after I worked in the public sector for like 2 years, I realized that I'm not patient enough, let's say. Like I really want to see things moving. And in the public sector, it takes a really long time to actually get to that. So the plans are let's say you have 5 years plan, and when you work there, it really looks like it might not happen, and politics might affect it as well, because we have a lot of elections in Israel, and so it's not only up to you to make it happen. In the private sector, you have more of there are politics at work always, but it's not the same. It's very different.
Yeah, indeed. A very interesting comparison. And you've sharpened sort of like your data analyst chops at a company that is like a gift voucher marketplace startup. And you've decided to move to London and pursue a different career path and also change the industry. Can you walk us through that experience a little bit more?
Yes, sure. So after working in the public sector, I felt that it's super important and interesting, but the pace is not for me. So I realized, I should move to the tech industry, and I really value a data-driven decision. So I was looking for a data career after the military exposure to that. In the gift card industry, it was interesting, but it was I felt like I completely not forgot my values, but like it wasn't in alignment with my values in any shape or form. So I wanted to do something that is more with social impact. So I wasn't specifically drawn to health, to be honest. I was looking into education, how to reduce waste, or like green impact, and health. So I came across this master at LSE, London School of Economics, and did a master in social innovation and entrepreneurship, which was a great way to kind of like introduce myself to like social startups where it's for profit. So the high pace and all of that is still like a really big thing there. But there is also some values that you want to promote, and you're looking into kind of like how to combine the two.
Yeah, I was very interested in how did you transition from a data analyst to a product manager, given the education that you've selected to pursue. And could you please describe to us how did you manage to pull this off?
Sure. So because I moved to a new country, I felt like after my master, it would be a really big leap of faith to take me first time working in London and to a new career path, right? So I joined Zava. It's an online doctor company, previously called Dr. Ed, as the lead data analyst for a team of a few. Joined there, kind of like got things in order, realized that there's a lot of things to be done in the product. And after 6 months, when I really created good relationship with my stakeholders and so on, there was a new opening in product. It's kind of like after understanding like exactly, it was a product role that was like highly dependent on having good clinical data, and my understanding of that was quite high by that time, quite good. So the CPO approached me and asked if I would like to be considered for that role. And it was, for me, a perfect match for my career goals. So I actually interviewed. So which is always a bit more challenging within a company. Like, I don't know if challenging is the right word, actually, but it's more higher risk inside the company, because if you get a no, it's harder to kind of like progress from there.
Still have to work with these people, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's not like I'll never see you again. But luckily it went well, and I transitioned to product. And I think that my master really helped me, because I learned a lot about like business canvas and marketing strategies and so on, which really helped transitioning me from like a pure data person to more like business oriented PM.
Yeah, very important to have those kind of like inside knowledge to help you communicate efficiently with the other parties. And I was wondering, as a follow-up to the question with regards to the interview, what mindset, or maybe kind of like, I think mindset is the right word, helped you get through the interview?
So I prepared a lot. I really think that helped. I read some books that I knew that the people that are interviewing me rely on a lot in their career, like a lean startup or Empowered by Marty Kagan. Some of the basic, I don't know if basic ones that really help, I think, understanding the product mindset. I also felt that I have much more thorough understanding of the problems that they are facing because of the data experience that I had within the company, and that really helped as well. And in terms of the mindset, I felt like you need to believe in yourself. Like there is a sentence that in Hebrew that says like only the ones who dare succeed. So something like that.
Good. Great stuff. And I also could not agree with you more when it comes to like leaning into the qualities that may separate you from your peers when it comes to product management, but are also very applicable and very demandful in this area. Yeah, I definitely agree. And can you share some of the insights that you've realized whilst transitioning into product management from data analytics?
Sure. So, first of all, it wasn't a smooth transition in the sense that it was painful, I would say, but successful eventually. First of all, I learned that in the data discipline, and mostly if you work harder, you would have better results. So you get a task, if you need to complete it by a certain date, if you work more hours or take more time to complete the task, that would make the task successful, as long as you have the good kind of like brief from your stakeholders. When I transitioned to product, I realized that this would not fly the same way, because I need to make sure that the engineers are set up to success, my designer is set up for success, the stakeholders are like feeling that they are in control of the situation and that they know what's happening and why we are prioritizing certain work over the other. And there's a lot of stakeholders once you are in a product team. So I think I learned how to work smarter rather than harder. And it was a painful realization for me, because it's easier in a way to work harder, right? You just do more by yourself, but to make sure that others are working well, it takes more time. So that was first insight, I would say. The second thing I learned is to not be afraid to ask questions. So it's sometimes when you work with very technical people, and I see that everywhere I work, that people are kind of like being shy about saying that they don't understand when the conversation becomes very technical. And I completely understand where it's coming from. But if you don't ask those questions, there might be a more simple solution, or maybe some other people don't understand as well. So like the most junior engineer or so on. And most importantly, if you need to prioritize the work and you need to own it and communicate it to stakeholders, if you don't understand what is going on, you would not do a good job. So after being shy for a little bit, I realized that you need to make the engineers your friends in a way, making sure that they trust you, but that you can also ask them questions and understand and own your work in that way.
Yeah, I would definitely agree in terms of everything is in the perspective and in the right premise. Because if you are coming from a premise of, afraid to lose authority and kind of like show that you don't know something, whilst you should approach it from a totally different angle, that the premise is that to get to the bottom of the question, find a better solution. I think I asked you this question. I thought that a combination of working smarter and harder at the same time, where it's necessary, of course, would yield the best of results. But then I thought, well, there's like a famous Pareto principle where you can only do kind of like the 20% of the work that you do yield 80% of the results. But you still to kind of like have to push the rest of the 80% of the work to complete that 20%. And I was just wondering, as a product manager, does that realization help you to kind of like push those remaining 80%?
Yes, for sure. I feel like this principle is very important. I have another principle that like the first 10% of any new product, any new feature, any new project are the most difficult ones. So like I would say it's similar. I always say like the first sprint of a new thing is super painful. There's so much discovery to do and so on. But of course you want to finish it as well. So but the remaining 90% or like 80%, as you said, like it will be much more understood and smooth than the first ones.
Nice. Very interesting. Very interesting perspective. Yeah, I was wondering about the your definition of KPI, the things that you are working on that kind of like define your work in terms of the product success for a stakeholder that might not be necessarily in context of what you do day to day. So we can take a look at things and say, hey, you know what, this manager is really going after it.
So I feel like KPIs are key to bring alignment in different teams, especially now that I'm product lead and I have a few teams. I want to make sure that they have a clear KPI that they can work toward, and this guides them. And when they have prioritization questions, they don't need leadership or anyone like on a daily basis, because the metric will tell them what they need to work on, right? As long as you choose like a good metric and that is easily understandable by the team. So people need to have access to this KPI. They need to make sure that they can access it on a daily basis and that it helps them making decisions. So those are like, for me, the most important things about having KPIs, and that they don't change frequently, which is harder in an environment like ours at the moment. Like the whole tech industry had a lot of difficulties lately, but I would say that if possible, KPIs should not change frequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And as a follow-up, how do you pivot successfully in times of uncertainty where certain KPIs were the goal, but then the things changed and now you have to pivot?
First of all, I think it's important to take a step back and reflect, right? Some products or features would still make sense, even if the KPI is different. You need to kind of like reevaluate everything you worked on, but also kind of like open it up for like new things that might move the needle much more. So I think you need to kind of like take a step back, think about what will move the needle. Do you have plans? Do you need to do some discovery beforehand? Because sometimes it's not like, okay, now it's a new metric, go. You don't know what to do, what will actually work. I think communicating to teams, I learn it all the time that you need to communicate frequently and consistently across the board. So to make sure that sometimes you kind of like assume people understand, but they weren't in all of the meetings and they didn't hear the CTO talk about this or that. So
you're right.
You are the one that needs to communicate it to them and make sure that they understand the reasoning and they are bought into it. And if some things are not yet well structured, because when you shift, there is a lot of ambiguity in life. You need to be transparent about it and kind of like take people on this journey of like helping this ambiguity becomes clarity. But you need to ask them to help you in this and not expect you to do all of the... Of course, you have a role in this, but you need to make sure that everybody is coming together to do this, to give this clarity.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on this point when it comes to, it's not over communication if it's, if it's serving the right purpose. And speaking about Ada Health, this is an app which is made by doctors for checking symptoms against thousands of conditions and therefore improving outcomes for the end users. What value proposition of this app, from your perspective, makes you excited working on the product the most?
So I think first of all, I'm really excited to help people manage their health in general, especially if you ever had a health concern or some of your loved one had a health concern, having something like that is always with you that you can check and understand how stressed in a way you should be, or getting some reassurance. For me, also the fact that it really promotes self-care and empowering the users to become healthier. So we have the symptom assessment. We also have tests, like diagnostic tests in the US. We now have some tools to assess your eligibility for COVID medications to avoid severe COVID. And we are launching more and more things to help users remain healthy. So on the prevention aspect, and kind of like focusing on those users that are at high risk of getting comorbidities or any like more major health concerns.
Gotcha. And how do you go about this sort of like fine line in a product such as Ada Health of educate the user, but also not dab too much into self-medication, and also remind them like if things are serious, you should definitely see a qualified pro. Yeah.
Yes. So first of all, we are a medical device, which means that we are subject to a lot of regulation and to making sure that we are very safe for the users, which should put the users at ease as well. We have an amazing medical safety and medical quality teams that help us make sure that everything that we build, and in like every step of the development, we have the users at mind, and making sure that they are not harming themselves or anything that is out of the question. And lastly, I would say the structure is that we have technical people, product people, and medical product people.
Given that you know everything about your core customer, right? Who is this application for? I'm asking in terms of like if people have heard about this app, got excited about it, and want to try it out. So just a few words from you as a product leader of this app.
So I would hope it's for everyone. So anyone that has any health concern. The people that we are focusing the most at the moment are US users and people with, again, like any comorbidities, so diabetes, high blood pressure, people with like an ongoing health concern that we can serve better and maybe try to prevent from anything getting worse. But to be honest, as a healthy young person, I feel that I use this app quite often to check also on things that are not specifically for me. So, for example, if a friend of mine is telling me about a health concern, I might check the app and see if there's anything that they should do or stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it's only for the, like, let's say, older, more at risk population, but for actually anyone, carers as well.
Right. So if you want to raise awareness to your well-being, I highly recommend checking Ada Health. How do you stay in the loop of what's happening in product management in healthcare domain? What is your go-to information source?
So first of all, I took a course from Reforge. I think it was like 2 years ago. And I highly recommend their content. I also really enjoyed the course. So I think they like really provide like high standard quality content on a weekly basis. And so this is one thing that really helped me stay in the loop. Another thing, I am subscribed to Lenny's newsletter. I think it's trending at the moment. It's also a podcast, and he has like really high quality interviews and you get to learn about a lot of like different perspective on a certain problem. And some content is not relevant for me, but a lot of the content is relevant, and it's really nice to kind of like have this opportunity to learn more about product leaders. I didn't find yet something that keeps me in the loop of healthcare and product management at the same time, but I do keep updated in different, let's say, health tech domain newsletters. Now trying to find more and more about the US market since we have this focus at Ada.
Awesome. Yeah. Shout out to Lenny. He's a man. And I don't know if you heard about this podcast. It's called CareMinds. We are, trying to get people, to share their perspectives on the healthcare and health tech. Wink. So stay tuned for that. All right. So jokes aside, AI tools in product management. The headlines have been made. People have been talking about this. The concept is, something that people are toying with currently, but it's still up in the air. How do you view those tools? Do you see them as an augmentation to your abilities as a product manager? And do you see yourself using those in kind of like the nearest future?
First of all, Ada Health also uses AI for their symptom assessment, and we have for everything like on medical service. The new tool, the ChatGPT, I find it amazing. It doesn't do everything, but I try every day to use it for something, right? Currently, I use it a lot to like write tickets. It sounds maybe kind of like the boring task, but I don't have a lot of time on my plate. When I want to raise a few tickets for my team, it really helped me write more content. And even though it doesn't write it in the perfect way, I wouldn't say, and you need to review it, but it does make it more, like the process is more efficient. So this is how I use it at the moment, but I'm very keen to learn like more ways to use it in the future.
Okay, thank you. And which product growth stage healthcare or a health tech company could massively benefit from a data analyst and a product manager with data analyst expertise? I feel like it could be a very strong working link.
So for me, if you're like a founder of a startup, this should be one of your first hires, because it really helps you understand where you are and what should you do to move the needle. If you don't have a data person or somebody that is kind of like looking at the numbers, knowing what you need to track and really checking your performance, it's really hard to decide where to focus on, and you might make the wrong decision. So for me, data should be in every size of any company and should be really part of the prioritization process to make sure that you really know why you're doing something and that what might be the impact. So you don't focus where it's not needed.
Yeah, right. And because it's also largely about the premises and the perspectives, if there is like a consensus between stakeholders, users, the expectations, and the resource available to introduce an R&D in terms of like adding a dedicated data analyst working on your product, how do you go about it as a product manager to ensure that you're defining like tangible implementation roadmap where R&D has very definable outcomes? Because it's, sometimes in certain companies when it's not treated that way, the discovery tends to be like this ever-changing thing with the outcomes that some stakeholders are not expecting. And so I was wondering, how do you incorporate that into like something very tangible and very result-oriented?
So I wouldn't say that it's always perfect, but the way I would try to do it is if you have a KPI for let's say for the company, and then for every group or team that you have, it's easier to understand like where you should focus. I would say that once you have that, it's really important to open the floor to the engineers, the designers, and anyone that is part of this team to suggest ideas. So I use the format of it's Teresa Torres that has this opportunity tree. So we have like the opportunity you want to go after, goal, and different types of ideas and experiments that you want to do to try and actually move that needle. So I tend to do this process with my teams to check if they have, like, a lot of the times engineers and designers have much better ideas than product people. It's only the fact that you need to work together to make sure that this actually happens and to sell this idea to more people internally and externally. So for me, it's important that we collaborate on that. As long as you have like a clear defined goal, floor is open for ideas, and we can always think together about a way to measure those ideas and make sure that we don't go full into like a really big project that won't yield any results. So how can we slice it or make it as lean as possible to check if it actually brings the result that we hope for?
Yeah, very interesting. Can you please finish this sentence? So you can't be a product manager, or it would be extremely hard for you to become one if you don't have X qualities. What do you think those qualities are?
So I would say there are a few, so it won't be like a one word. I think prioritization skills are important. The fact that you need to make hard decisions. There's always a trade-off, and you need to be aware of that. Another one is resilience, because you are always in the nice way, you are always in this like interchange between business, tech, and UX, but you're also being pulled to those different directions. Sometimes you want to serve the business, but you will create tech debt. Sometimes you want to serve tech, but it means that you won't finish deadlines. So you need to make sure that you are resilient to those push from different directions. For me to be like really successful as a PM, you need to be proactive. So a person that is curious and wants to do more and learn more in his or her job is quite important. And having like good kind of like people skills or soft skills to make sure that you manage the stakeholders part, which is one of the most important things. If you are a great product manager to your team, but your stakeholders are not bought into what you do, you're not doing a good job, unfortunately. So, those are quite important for me.
Nice. Great summary. Being a data analyst, can you share some of the practical tips on avoiding analysis paralysis as a product manager? I felt like data analysts have like an innate ability of operating a little bit better in when it comes to ambiguity, but you've corrected me on this, and I'm curious to let everybody know your perspective on this.
So I think that sometimes like having too much data is also dangerous, right? Because you can always display numbers in a way that makes your decision correct. Not always, but in a lot of cases. So it's important to understand that not making a decision is also a decision. So sometimes we are delaying a decision because we don't have enough data, or we want to collect more or learn another thing. But while we are not making a decision, like the industry changes, a new competitor comes in town, our users have different needs. So it's really important to understand that as well. And if you have a success metric in advance that you always measure and you know how are you doing, that should make you successful in this journey, I hope.
Good. What do you think are the kind of like qualities that separate product managers with data analytics experience compared to peers or compared to people with a different background?
So there's a lot of different backgrounds for product managers, some more in marketing, some in consulting. Each one has their own, I would say, advantages. For me, really important that product managers understand data at least. And the reasons is that one, it will really help them understand how to move the needle. So to make decisions and to own those decisions. If you feel comfortable and if you feel comfortable with data, it will really, really help you on your decisions and your prioritization. And I think the second part is getting credibility with stakeholders. I find that if I mention it to my stakeholders that I was a data analyst and that I know what I'm talking about in a way, it helps them trust me, and knowing that I did my math and I'm not going to go in this journey of like creating this amazing feature that doesn't have any impact. So I believe those two are big advantages for a product manager with data experience.
Yeah. I think that the second point is easily overlooked, and it's actually powerful because whilst you're in the context of, day-to-day or maybe like regular meetings with stakeholders, they tend to forget, right? And when you can, mention your credibility and you are actually backed up by data, this is extremely, good points when it comes to, making your case when it comes to product development. So yeah, this is a very interesting one. What do you think are the career challenges of a modern product manager? Maybe some of those from your personal experience, and if these were from your personal experience, tips on how to overcome them.
So I think one of them is like information overflow. So you asked me like, how do I keep up to date? I don't know how was it like 20 years ago when people were trying to keep up to date with their discipline, but at the moment there is so many new podcasts or new newsletters, and also in terms of like just your day-to-day work, Slack is obviously always have 500 notification in a minute, and there's so much communication overflow, right? I think that for me, the way I manage it is that first of all, I really know how to use it. Sounds funny maybe, but like I'm a big fan of Slack, like super fan. And I really know how to use all the different features to make sure that this is a comfortable environment for me. So if it's the section feature or the reminders or scheduled messages is one of my favorites. So you really try to make it like you use that and not it uses you. Like you need to feel that you really know how to use that too. And in terms of like the kind of like external information overflow, I try to keep like dedicated hours of the day that I try to check on external information so that I can focus on my work on the other hours of the day. So it's not kind of like bothers me all the time, and kind of like I have dedicated time, and that works for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I would completely agree that owning your environment is extremely important. Yeah, just importance of using the right language to back you up, and also kind of like the right mindset going about aligning expectations.
So I would say that one of the best advice I was given by one of my previous mentors was that you need to really understand your audience. So sometimes you go in a meeting and people have like zero context of what you're going to talk about, or they have very different incentives than yours. You want to really like think about the long term, and they only think about like short-term revenue. And once you really understand that, like let's call it like the incentive map of the audience you're going to discuss, it really helps you prepare and kind of like tailor your presentation or your messaging to that audience. So this is one of like the best advice I ever got. And the second thing is, I don't know, maybe it's very personal, but for me, I tend to work only in like very multicultural companies, and I live in the UK. I'm from Israel. It's a very, very different culture. And I think that understanding those like cultural differences, what people feel comfortable with, what people don't feel comfortable with, how do they like to communicate, how do they want to, like, do they feel kind of like, is it difficult for them to have a confrontation, or how do you need to solve those problems? is very important. One book that I can recommend is The Cultural Map, that really kind of like look at different culture from different perspectives, and it helps you kind of like take a step back in certain situations and really think if this is a cultural difference or actually disagreement, or how should you go about it. So those are two, I think, are key factors that I use.
Nice. Thanks. And wrapping up with a couple of Blitz questions. What is your favorite book for product managers? What do you think is the best one?
I think it's like super, probably the most popular and probably old, but I feel like Lean Startup really helps. So it helps you kind of like get the basics, and if you really get the basics, everything else works. So I might be a boring choice, but I think choose Lean Startup.
Yeah, your favorite hobby, maybe like a sports activity. It could be anything really.
So I like running, and I kind of like use it as meditation in a way, because it's not that I'm a good runner. I always say that, but I feel like it really cleans your head. And if we're talking about like this information overflow, you can't really access your Slack in the meantime. You can't answer anyone, Jira. Everything is kind of like you're just there running, trying your best to finish your 10K. So I really enjoy that, and I try to do it like a few times a week.
Yeah, physical activity is extremely, extremely important. And the first thing to do in Israel as a tourist?
Go to the beach and eat a lot. So the weather is really nice. I would say go in December, and it will probably be 20 degrees, which is amazing, especially if you live in the UK. And the food is really good. And I would recommend eating a lot of vegan food. So there's great vegetables, and it's really tasty. I know some people don't eat as many vegetables as I do, but I grew up that way, so I think it's really, really good.
Nice. Well, there you have it. Yuval, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for being a part of this episode. Folks, you've been watching CareMinds podcast. I'm your host, Daniel. This is Yuval Rubin from Ada Health. And remember, you already know everything you need to build better healthcare products. Until next time.